Hello everybody, welcome to the podcast. So the conversation that you're about to listen to is with Ross Connelly. Ross Connelly is a Scottish wrestler who's the current British champion and also two-time Commonwealth Games athlete. He's also our wrestling coach at Roger Gracie Academy Lee. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Firstly, I want to apologise. The audio isn't the normal high quality that I expect from my videos. What I didn't want to do is have to film it again, as some of the answers that Ross gives offered loads of insight into competing at such a high level as the Commonwealth Games. So again, apologies for the audio. Hope you enjoy it. Right, morning Ross. Sorry about the delay getting started. How are you doing? Thanks for coming down.
All good, Dave. Thank you very much for having me on.
Superb. I was thinking about when we first got in contact. I think it was July last year. We started the sessions in the gym, so we're currently in the gym changing rooms doing this podcast. How have you found being in the area, working with some of the clubs that you're working with?
It's been brilliant, to be honest, Dave. I couldn't have asked for a better start. Although obviously moving away, I'm moving down here.
It was like a bit closer.
It was like moving away from home. Is that right?
Yeah.
Obviously I was moving away from home, but it was like moving to a second home anyway. With wrestling, I was constantly down around about Manchester, Greater Manchester area. Got a lot of friends in the area too, so although I was moving away from home, it was kind of like moving to a second home. So as I say, I couldn't have had a better start down here. And yeah, everyone's been really welcoming. Everyone's helped me a lot, and I can't thank everyone.
Good man. So who are some of the clubs that you've been working with?
So I'm working in 2 jiu-jitsu gyms. I'm working with yourselves and Roger Gracie Lee. I'm working with Grapple Clinic, Bolton with Saul. I work with one MMA in Swinton, Manchester, and also a lot of my work is with madrasas, which is like Islamic schools, and they've got wrestling clubs up and running, and wrestling's part of their education, their curriculum. It's a sunnah sport, so they're rewarded for participating with good intention in wrestling. So yeah, it's kept me busy, but it's been really good.
So there's a lot of variation there, isn't there, from like jiu-jitsu, then wrestling for MMA, and then obviously just doing it like as
wrestling,
wrestling in general.
Yeah, it's been good, and it's helped me a lot with my understanding of it's not. I can't go into a jiu-jitsu gym, I can't go into an MMA gym and just teach pure wrestling. Obviously my background is completely in wrestling, I've not really dabbled in anything else. But in terms of that, it's helped me. I can't just go in and show pure wrestling. There needs to be some adaptations for jiu-jitsu, just like a small one. A small one off the top of my head is there's no wrestling bits in jiu-jitsu, so sometimes grabbing the ankles.
Although there are people buying them now, as we see in the gym and the lessons and that. Like.
So pleased to see it. Pleased to see it. I'm glad to see I'm rubbing off and stuff. But yeah, obviously like grabbing the ankles and that, and jiu-jitsu, it's harder to kick away, and that's just one off the top of my head. But on MMA, you're constantly having to think about the hands. Distances between you and your opponent are different. And I'm wrestling in jiu-jitsu, so in terms of that, it's been good. It's really opened my eyes, and I feel like now I've got a better understanding of the sports individually, not just seeing it through the wrestler's eyes.
I suppose your preparation, that affects your preparation, and that's you're obviously planning sessions out during your week, what you're going to teach each and every club, and that takes a long time, and then it's a prep for each discipline. What you might do in jiu-jitsu with us tonight might be different from what you do with the MMA club.
Absolutely, yeah, and it is different. My sessions sometimes between here at Roger Gracie and Grapple Clinic can be similar. They're not the same because again, participants are different levels, participants have different needs, so that does vary. But the general kind of plan for me coaching and jiu-jitsu sessions stays pretty much the same. There is flexibility, but I find it much easier to coach wrestling to jiu-jitsu guys.
Right.
Again, because there's quite a few similarities, more similarities than there is between wrestling for MMA.
We're going to touch on it at the end really, but we may as well talk about it now. Like, what are some of the differences that you're seeing in terms of maybe gyms, just the gym etiquette, gym culture compared to like wrestling gyms and jiu-jitsu gyms?
I think Jiu-Jitsu gyms have got it on point. I think Jiu-Jitsu gyms are doing it much better, and I think wrestling clubs or wrestling gyms are now really trying to use the Jiu-Jitsu model, slowly trying to follow that. And that's not just in clubs, that's in terms of holding competitions.
Oh, right.
I think Jiu-Jitsu has done it really well.
So in what way, like, what?
First of all, running them as a business. And people can make a living from coaching.
And that's weird, that, isn't it? It's just happened with Jiu-Jitsu, because judo clubs, I'd imagine they run the same as wrestling, maybe the work on funding from Sports England and all that kind of stuff.
But the demand for Jiu-Jitsu over the last couple, you'll know better than the last couple of years, has really skyrocketed. And I think wrestling need to look into more, but do it more in depth. How is Jiu-Jitsu taking
like follow
these members in?
And
I don't mean just high level Jiu-Jitsu players, I mean beginners, how they get beginners in the door, because ultimately that's what wrestling needs, that's what it needs to survive. They need to get, whether it's kids, newbies, they need to get more members in.
It's a bit of a taboo subject, to be honest, like that you have to, people are treating Jiu-Jitsu gyms like a business, and that's the taboo subject, that it's almost seen as like a little bit, don't really talk about it, but I've got to run it as a business.
That's part of the problem in wrestling.
Yeah.
People are then scared to say a wrestling club's a business because it's not been like that previously. And as I say, it's becoming more now, but there's still that kind of, he's only doing it for the money. Well, if you can make a living through coaching, coaching.
Why else? You can have passion and a love for it.
Passionate about it and making a career. And that's kind of what I'm doing now, and I don't doubt there will be people somewhere that are saying, he's doing it for the money or that. Well, I do need to make a living, but ultimately that comes from my overriding my passion, my love for the sport.
You're giving value, aren't you? You're offering value from your years of expertise and knowledge.
And
why should someone pay for that value?
Absolutely, and if I can benefit the sport in any way and improve the next generation of wrestlers or people coming into wrestling, as well as making a career for myself, why not? Why not? But slowly I think it's coming to a stage where we're hopefully getting away from that, but there's still some dinosaurs that are stuck like, no, it should just be a club that's run as complete voluntary, 2 or 3 nights a week, and well, why?
And you have a full-time job in the meantime.
Why should it be like that? It's not like that. I can only speak in terms of wrestling, I'm not sure in Jiu-Jitsu, but the top wrestling nations in the world, they're not doing it voluntary, they're not doing it because it's...
There's you've obviously heard of Gracie Barra.
Yeah, of course.
So they're a big franchise, they're arguably the biggest Jiu-Jitsu franchise in the world. Thousands of gym. And there's the running joke online on Instagram that they just want money off you. Do you know what I mean? You have to buy all their equipment, all their rash guards with all their branding on it and everything. So it's a franchise, it's a money-making franchise. But they're affording their instructors an opportunity to teach and get paid for it, open their own school, make a career out of it, like we're saying.
And the coaches,
they've gone to the nth degree. In my opinion, they've gone almost too far, where it is just capital money-making. But the models there,
they're only going to keep growing, especially if they're making money from it. And as you say, it offers people a chance to be under a established brand. That straight away attracts people and through the door, and that's how memberships build. And of course, they can build very quickly. But I don't doubt that their intention initially was to benefit the sport.
Just to spread
absolutely. And look, how many people have came to the sport, to Jiu-Jitsu, because of that brand, because they've experienced a Gracie Barra session. So, although you can say they're taking money, but there's also probably a lot of pressure on them in terms of having coaches paying for facility, organising facilities, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of responsibility on them too. So it's like in any organisation, I don't see why, because it's wrestling or because it's Jiu-Jitsu, because it's MMA, why it should be any different to any other kind of...
So wrestling must have beginners programs, because you obviously started in wrestling at some point, so is it not done to the same?
No.
Talk about how you got into wrestling. Was it through your dad? Were you following your dad's footsteps?
Yeah, so my dad was a wrestler previously. He wrestled for Scotland and Great Britain too. And when I was about 5 years old, he was a coach at my local club. And it just kind of naturally that my dad was going out the door at night to wrestling, and I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So then wrestling at that time is being generous. I wouldn't say it was wrestling. I was going and just falling about, rolling about the mat.
But you were in that environment.
I was in that environment, yeah. And then, just over time, I realised that I really enjoyed it. I had a passion for it, but it was fun to me. The hardest thing that I always found was that my mates were going to play away playing football, or away playing mostly football, but maybe rugby or whatever else they were doing. And I think it's natural, and I think that's what's a problem for a lot of kids, especially when they're younger. So that's kind of school ages. That's easier for go and do something with my friends. It's natural, but also I had that connection with my dad going to wrestling, so then that helped me with sticking with it. But that was kind of. And then as I got older, about 11, 12, then I realised I had talent for it.
Was there a certain point when you thought, do you know what, that's a good idea? Or did someone give you the feedback and say,
well,
normally it comes from the course, doesn't it?
It was more.
Keep your head down.
It was more that. It never really came so much from my dad. My dad was just a supportive parent, and that's really what it was.
No pressure on whatsoever.
And I think that comes from a lot of parents who have been in the sport themselves. It's not a parent that's trying to live their dreams as a kid. He was just a supportive parent. He was a coach, and as I got older and older and older, he probably became less of a coach and just as a dad, even though he was still coaching teams and stuff. It was just. But going back to what you said, I was about 11 or 12, which again sounds young, but it was back then I think it was a development squad, which became the national talent squad. And the national coach at the time, Anatoly, had asked me to go and train with the national team, and at that time the youngest age was 14, but I was only, I think I was 11 turning 12, round about then. And I was too light for everyone, I was too young for everyone really, but I wanted me to be part of the team, and at that time I just felt valued. You know what I mean? Even though I was so young, I was excited. I was so excited by that, so motivated by that. Even though I was so young, I was like, this is everything. I was like, wow. And I know we spoke to Charlie previously on the podcast, but at that time we had a really strong. The development squad into the national talent squad was a very strong group. Good depth of wrestlers, a lot of numbers on the mat. So when I was kind of called in, and they were slightly older than me when I was called into that group, I was like, wow, this is brilliant. And from there it wasn't that I was like, okay, that's me, I just want to be part of this. It was, I don't know, I want to do my best, I want to prove myself, I want to do that. And that comes back to something my dad has said from probably about that age. It's probably about then he started saying this, that when it comes to selection, disappointment's everything. If you have the results, if you've done the work, then nobody can have any arguments. And that's what people now, they still get so sidetracked and they're worried about what everyone else is doing, or he didn't get this result, or he's won this tournament, blah 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 blah. And they just take the focus away from the sport and they're training themselves. If they've got the right results, if they've done the hard work, then it should fall into place. It's not always going to be the case, but that always kind of gave me that peace of mind. If that makes sense.
Definitely, If you say you give everything, you couldn't have had another training session, you couldn't have had more prepared diets. If the result doesn't go your way, then there's nothing to say, is there?
There's always going to be disappointments. There's more disappointments than victories or things that are going to be happy, but that feeling you get when something does plan out, when you do get that kind of thing you're looking for, it overrides all the disappointments.
So am I right in saying you've qualified for 2 Commonwealth Games?
Yes.
Gold Coast and Birmingham in, was it 22?
22, yeah.
What was that experience like, and how difficult is qualification for those kind of things?
Qualification for me, first of all, both Commonwealth Games, very different experiences for me. Ultimately, still the same.
Well, one's in Australia, beautiful sunny beaches.
That's one thing, but 2 different experiences. Ultimately, the same outcome with extreme disappointment, to be honest. But in terms of qualification for me was much more difficult in 2018. for my first Commonwealth Games.
Gold Coast, yeah.
Gold Coast, yeah. That was, I just kind of came out into the seniors. I'd been wrestling seniors since 16, but I'd only just kind of became a senior. I was still young, I was only 17, 18 when I was trying to qualify. It was hard because I was the younger one in the group. A lot of people wanted to go to the Commonwealth Games because it's in Australia. Older wrestlers coming back, wanting to make the team again because it's in Australia.
Yeah.
Don't know what that.
What the attraction was with that?
Yeah, I don't know what drew them to want to go to another Commonwealth Games, but so for that was like the ultimate. I was constantly having to prove myself. Every single competition.
Yeah.
And when it came to that, I had the best qualifying results. Guys that medalled in the previous Commonwealth Games in Glasgow had better qualification results. So we first had to qualify the British Senior Open Championships. It was the first qualifier, I believe. I was second in that. I lost to a guy from Bolton for England, George Rand.
George, I think we've got a man from George before.
Yeah. He's a good friend of mine. But at that time, even now, but George was a very good wrestler, but also had a lot more experience, a lot stronger than me, just more developed. George beat me in the final, but I'd still met the criteria. The next competition after that, I think, to qualify was Commonwealth Championships in South Africa, where I managed to get a bronze medal, which is probably, to me, my most special result to date, because I knew when I made that, I got that result, they couldn't really not select me. Because
so the Commonwealth Championship is different to the Commonwealth Games?
Yes, it's usually ran the year before the Commonwealth Games, and it's all the Commonwealth nations, but they can send 2 athletes at every weight.
Okay.
Commonwealth Games normally can only send 1. There's a couple of exceptions, but normally just 1. And I was only 18. Very strong competition, very difficult competition. I managed to get a bronze medal. I think I was the only British wrestler to get a medal in the competition. But for me, that's more special to me because then I was like, I've done everything I can. I can't prove myself anymore. That was very special that one for me because it solidified that I was like, surely I must be.
Yeah.
And then for Birmingham, the selection, what was the selection for Birmingham again?
Once you've had the Commonwealth Games, I'm right in saying that the Commonwealth Games is every 4 years as well, but the Olympics is in between each Commonwealth Games.
Yeah, by 2 years,
Yeah. So what happens after you finish the Commonwealth Games? Do people just start thinking, right, it's Olympic Games next, or is the Olympic qualification on a different, kind of parallel?
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. The Olympic qualification is extremely difficult. And other sports like athletics and even boxing and stuff, most other sports where they do have big representation at Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games, they will be ultimately their 4 year cycle will be based on the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Commonwealth Games in there is just a bonus, but when it comes to Commonwealth Games time, they'll be fully committed to Commonwealth Games.
Okay.
After Commonwealth Games, they'll be straight back to the Olympic head. Trying to think of the Commonwealth qualification for Birmingham. I know it was very similar. The Commonwealth Championships before Birmingham were cancelled due to COVID.
Right.
They were meant to be South Africa again. We were meant to be flying 3 days before, and then there was a new Omicron. It was in Africa. That virus came around. So, but just going back to about the experience of both very special experiences. It's hard to explain what the experience for them is like. If you've not kind of been a part of it, but it's like how I describe it, especially in Australia when it was Athletes Village and everything like that, and you're having breakfast in Johan Blake, sitting beside your Tom Daly's walking around. It's a bit surreal, but for that full time, you eat the same in Birmingham, you feel like you're in a bubble. You've just got everything you can think about. And I can imagine the Olympics being on a scale even 10,000 of that. You've got every kind of medical support you need, physio, unbelievable food, all foods around the world. Nice accommodation. And that regard very special. It's hard to explain and very unique, and it's also a great privilege to do. That's the highest honour you can represent Scotland or England, because after that it's Team GB.
Yeah.
So for me representing Scotland, that's
cool. Is there any moment that sticks out off the top of your head that like might not mean anything, might not need to be related to like victory on the mat or anything, but any particular moment that sticks out as to like, you know what, I remember that?
Yeah, and in my first ones in Australia, there is a moment, and the only time I've had actually mentioned this, or somebody noticed it, was my coach was standing beside me when we were about to walk out for the opening ceremony in Australia. And Scotland, because they had hosted the previous games in Glasgow, were the first team to walk out into the stadium in Australia, like the following games. And when we were waiting to go in the stadium, and we were quite near the front, semi-near the front, and the Scottish flag went up at the front, and I don't know, I just kind of got this, I wasn't crying, but I got this kind of overriding like emotion, wow, and I think my coach kind of seen it in my face. I felt so proud and so, I don't know, I'm emotional with it. I didn't shed any tears. It was like an overriding this wave of emotion that just was like, and then the national anthem started playing and stuff like that, and that moment I was just like, wow.
You talk about crying and stuff like that. Obviously I'm not Scottish whatsoever. Do you remember a boxer called Ricky Burns?
Yeah.
Boxing, yeah.
He's from close to me.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from Commonwealth. He's from, I think, Coatbridge or Edinburgh, which is like the next town.
So I used to be a big fan of Ricky Burns.
Yeah.
I'm not so much into boxing at the moment, well, recently, but when I was growing up I was massively into boxing. And Ricky Burns used to come out, and he always came out to Flower of Scotland.
Yeah.
And fucking hell, sometimes. I'd be watching it and all, because predominantly he'd fight in Scotland as well.
Yeah.
And the crowd would be singing this song back to him or with him and that when he'd come out. And even me as like no part Scotsman whatsoever, like just be like, Jesus, that's emotional. That
Charlie loves that. See when they do it at the Scottish football games, he loves it when they start singing, oh come on. It's
special. The back of your head stand up and that.
That's how I felt in that moment. I was just like, this is unbelievable. But then, okay, a couple of minutes you can enjoy it or whatever, but ultimately we're there to do perform on that. That Commonwealth Games was more about, for me, I didn't have too much expectation going into the competition. I'd come off the back of that really good result in the December in South Africa at the Commonwealth Championships, obviously. But realistically, I know this is going to be difficult, but I need to take in this experience, because in 4 years' time in Birmingham, I want to be standing on that podium. So I lost in very, very disappointing fashion to a guy who just completely took me by surprise, a guy who had no footage on or anything for the match. We had footage for, I can't remember how many people on the way, but we had footage on every single guy besides this guy. And he was just very tall, very dangly, very strong. He was aggressive from the first one. He just I probably froze a bit in a way. I wouldn't, maybe frozen isn't the right word, but I maybe got a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
I was I think I lost 4 points in the first 20 seconds. Then I was chasing, I got it back to 4 each. And then I lost another 4 points. I think I lost 8-4 in the end, which was extremely disappointing. I knew that he wasn't going to win again. I knew that was my competition over.
Yeah.
But dusted myself off. And then, up until between Gold Coast and Birmingham was when I feel that I really developed as a wrestler. I became a much better wrestler. I moved up weight categories. I moved up by 2 by the time I wrestled in Birmingham.
What weights were then? What weights was you at Gold Coast?
57 kilograms.
And then what at Birmingham?
65.
Right. Was that just you growing up and maturing, or did you purposely
I purposely went to 65. Between the 2 weights there's a non-Olympic weight category which wouldn't have been in Birmingham, so I had to go, either had to stay 57 or go to 65.
Yeah.
So for the first year, 18 months, I wrestled 61, which I felt good at as well, and I could have probably stayed 61, but I had to then try and build in the last 2 years.
So what were you doing, like any weights and that, changing all your diet and that, or did you just naturally grow bigger as you
I naturally grew, but I also then had to implement much more strength conditioning. My coach was really good at that. Obviously I had to eat more, but it was more the fact that I didn't have to worry about so much having to lose weight or anything. So, and then with that, I think my body naturally just needed that volume of food, needed that strength conditioning. Strength conditioning was massive for me. When I was 57 kilos, I never done it.
Right.
Very rarely I liked conditioning, I always liked running. the strength side of it I never really done.
Yeah.
And it was definitely detrimental to me because it was like I started strength conditioning quite late probably.
Yeah.
But it was because I really didn't enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy it, and part of that was probably because I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But once I started doing it, I get the bug for it, and now it's like a stapler. Never I do that. I'm not wrestling as much. I'm sure we'll go into that, but now I'm doing much more strength conditioning than anything else. So.
How do you deal with? Because obviously, like you're trying to peak. So the cycle's 4 years then, 2 Commonwealth Games in it. So you're similar to the Olympic Games. Like you're trying to peak to perform in like 4 years time, or the 2 years if you start the qualification. How do you deal with like you've got to train hard, but you obviously don't want to get injured? Is there much awareness put on that, or do you just train as hard as you can and hopefully you're not injured by the start of the Commonwealth Games?
A lot of that is luck.
Right.
You know what it's like. You can be, unfortunately, you can be injured just before, you can be ill before it and stuff like that, and you just need to try and deal with that. In terms of the 4 years,
it's just that the window's so small in it to make sure you're in like tip-top condition, peak performance.
I'd say in terms of like the 4 years, it's just I done it anyway. I can't speak for anyone else, but I just took it all the small targets. Like so, I'd have my year goals of English national championships. Maybe 1 or 2 international, maybe 2 or 3 international competitions called the European or World Championships, or British National Championships. So then they were my goals for the year. Mm-hmm. Birmingham or Gold Coast were always in the back of my mind. They were like the end point.
But never thinking too far ahead.
Well, no, I wasn't every day. Some days I had to use it as motivation. Days I was tired, I didn't want to train, I didn't feel 100%.
You had to extrapolate.
I had to go at that Commonwealth Games and think, I need this today, I need to do this. But my goal from day to day or week to week in training was to be ready for English championships, European championships, the British championships, World Championships, whatever. They were my goals day to day, week to week. Get better and try and improve technically. Strength conditioning and stuff like that as well. As I say, they were the Commonwealth Games was the end goal, and I had to pull motivation from it, but it wasn't. I couldn't be obsessed with that because it's 3 years away, 2 years away.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because the shorter, closer goals were what kept you ticking over to get to there. When you were feeling down or less motivated, or because not everybody wants to get out of bed in the morning when it's cold and rain outside and go and train. The motivation for that was the long-term goal that pulled you through that.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah.
My job when I come in to work with you guys, but by the way, I will say this, I'm not just saying it because you're here, I've told many people this, it's a session that I genuinely really look forward to every week, because and that's because of the atmosphere and the guys here. I'm not going to say that unbelievable, like technically or anything like that, it's coming, we're working on it, but the feel of the gym, everybody's so friendly, everybody's so welcoming. And that comes from you, obviously. That's a culture that you've created in here.
I appreciate that. It's one thing that I try and do is, like, people remember how you make them feel, don't they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come here, eventually you'll improve, but if you want to come in and have a good time, everyone's having a good crack.
That was something I felt from the very first day I came in. I felt welcome in the gym. I felt everyone's got good
fantastic,
friendly, so
I appreciate that feedback.
But yeah, my job, or my role when I come in to help you guys is to improve you guys as ultimately jiu-jitsu players, or help your jiu-jitsu. If there's small details that I can offer from wrestling that can contribute towards it, then I feel like I've done my job. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to, like I said before, about what did I say before about jiu-jitsu? Understanding the sport more. Understanding the sport in its own capacity better, then I can try and relate it back to wrestling and maybe make some adjustments.
And if you've got that kind of mindset, and I think that you have from the short time that I know you, I think that'll be something that is a motivation for you as well. That because you maybe I don't know what your knowledge was of jiu-jitsu before starting it, but
nothing, zero.
You could think, wait, how can I tailor this single leg entry more specific for jiu-jitsu? Because I know we'd done previously in the session, there was a certain position that I spoke to you about, and you was like, well, this is how it works in wrestling, and then we kind of put the jiu-jitsu spin on it, and it was the same idea, wouldn't it be escape, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And that can happen in any position. adapt. It's not like I'm a dictator that, no, this is how we do it, blah blah blah. I'm flexible at that, and I'm open to try and improve my understanding too. Because if I can improve it in here when I'm working with you guys, then it's another string to my bow and I can go and offer to another jiu-jitsu gym. If a jiu-jitsu player comes and wants to wrestle with me, do a PT, then I already have that understanding.
And it's something you mentioned in the MMA as well, you've got to think about punches and that aspect of it now, so that's going to, and even, it's a relatively new aspect of the sport, isn't it, wall wrestling?
Yeah.
Because obviously freestyle wrestling, you're on a mat, there's no walls or cage doors or anything like. So how do you, I mean, I'm not really a massive MMA fan, I do watch it, but just out of interest, how do you deal with that? Or how do you learn to?
That's interesting. I'm still trying to learn a bit about wall wrestling. I do it more with the guys that run MMA in Swinton. There's been a few sessions where we've covered stuff on the wall. I've not suggested that, I've been asked questions about it. I wouldn't go into the session and start coaching from the wall. I feel like that's better for the MMA or the grappling coaches that they have in the gym, because they understand the MMA kind of cage thing better. But I've offered just a couple of, I've went into the positions that I've been, for example, stuck on the wall, and I've tried to feel for myself. I've tried to understand.
And if you've experienced the
feel of it. Then I try and relate it back to wrestling. How what I would do if I was stuck on that wall, what would I do? But I make that clear to the guys. Look, I've never been in a MMA cage, and I've never had a guy striking me and I'm stuck against the wall. But if it was in wrestling, this is what I would do. If I was in that situation, this is what I'd do. That's an area I'm really trying to understand as well.
Would you say you've got to? Sorry, go on.
It's difficult.
But I mean, as part of that, I know from myself, like, although I got my black belt in May last year, and I read this post the other day and I thought that like sums it up to a T, that my game, my attributes, long, lean, lend themselves to certain techniques, certain moves
100%.
that I may be proficient enough to be worthy of the rank of black belt. Where there's other positions, maybe that I've got good enough knowledge of it, but that I necessarily don't. Maybe I'm not black belt level in that position.
That's like the technique you have spoken about in here as well. Just use your strengths, use your tools, use what you have to offer. There is some techniques that for you, because you are tall, you've got longer arms, it's going to be difficult. Like, for example, we spoke about you going under. You can go, you can reach, you can pull like you've got a long reach. There's other times for a shorter guy, it's difficult, maybe easier for them to go around the sides. As opposed to going under and getting stuck. So you need to use what you have, and it's not a one size fits all. And that kind of comes back to what I kind of see my coaching philosophy is everyone's different. And if you try and coach everyone the same, then it's not going to work. It will work for one or two maybe people who are really talented or people who have a very good understanding of the sport. But in general, I don't believe that's work. It's hard in a class because you need to show a general position or a general technique. But then that's why I like to go around, give individual feedback and just be like, well, maybe you could do it like this. Maybe you could think about setting the technique up from here. And
that's been one of the things that I've been. It's not like I'm analysing your coaching protocols as we're walking around, but that is one thing that I have noticed, that although you give like one general position or technique during the class, the options you're giving everybody are kind of specific and tailored to what
100%.
they might do.
In my opinion, Jiu-Jitsu I'm sure it'll be the same, but I think wrestling gets overcomplicated. People think there's 100 million techniques. There's maybe core techniques of maybe 10, 15, right, whatever. There is quite an amount of techniques. The technique stays the same. Okay, I'll do it different to you, you'll do it different to me. Okay, that's fine. But the finish, the beginning and the end, is what is going to differ. How you set that technique up, how you finish that technique depending on how your opponent reacts. So if, for example, if I go to a single leg, you're going to react different to me taking a single leg on you compared to me reacting if you take it on me. Does that make sense? And having options depending on how they move, how they react, how they apply their weight on you. Having options to finish there is how you're going to complete the technique. the single leg, pretty much other than a couple of technical details, positioning, gripping, is a single leg.
Yeah.
But the beginning, how you get to that leg can be different, and how you finish that technique,
I think different. That makes perfect sense.
And I think that's where it becomes overcomplicated. People are like,
well, it's the same as jiu-jitsu. There's a million and one positions, techniques, whether you're top, bottom, side control, and the best way I've kind of found to simplify it to a certain degree is you need one or two options from each position.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like if you're in close guard, for example, if you have like one sweep, one submission, maybe one sweep to each side, a couple of submissions, that's all you really need. But I mean, there's encyclopedias written on what to do from close guard.
And it all depends what suits you and what you like. It's not a one size fits all. And that's what I find you'll know yourself with beginners. When you do a technique on them and they don't react, there's no reaction.
It's actually more difficult.
100%.
Sparring or
I think that's a million things more difficult on a beginner because there is no reaction, there is no movement.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's why as well, I think, because wrestling is relatively new for us as a club. We're obviously trying to get better with like everything, we're trying to get better, we're trying to improve. Wrestling with each other, like we're trying to be loose, trying to be relaxed, but because we are getting tense, we're not like moving the same as we would to be able to get the entries for
100%.
single leg move,
I
double
think
leg.
that comes from, you're right about being intense, but I think that comes from a lot of that's hesitation. We spoke about it in classes. I think, especially in terms of taking the shot, shooting for the legs, so not just in so many jiu-jitsu they hesitate so much, and it becomes very easy for the defender to defend. You need to commit to that shot 100%, but that confidence only comes from one, drilling, working reps until you're bored of it. That muscle memory, that movement, like knee over toe, it's not a natural movement. And it's not, especially when you're in a wrestling round or a grappling round, it's not natural. But if you do it a million times, it will become much more natural. And then also with that drilling, with that trying, becomes a confidence of when you're in a round. Okay, I'm going to explode through this guy. I'm going to go as fast as 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And then just be confident in your options. Then if he does defend, then okay, what's your plan B? What's your plan C? What's your plan B? And with that, then you'll have the confidence anyway because you know what you're going to do. Yeah. In the next steps, if that makes sense.
No, get it.
But that's also hard to teach if you need to have that initial movement first. That knee over toe or the exploding towards the legs, head up, legs up to drive.
There's a lot of things going on at once.
Yeah. And it's hard to break habits. It's something I'm really big on, is trying to install good habits. And I don't mean, that's not me even talking about like their personal life or their training or whatever, their habits are up to them, but I mean on the mat, technical habits, good technical habits. Nothing
it's funny, we did something last night, sorry to interrupt you there, we did a position last night, we went round to the back, we was in the gi as well, but we went round to the back, and I went cross hip, and it was all it was like, fucking Ross, what about you then?
Lucky I never seen it. Well, like that, technical habits.
Yeah.
And it's having a good basics, really good basics. That's what the best guys in the world have.
It's like jiu-jitsu, fundamentals.
Even football.
People want to like go on to the flashy stuff and that, but if you've got a good base, solid fundamentals and that.
If you don't have a good base for the house is going to fall down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same whether it's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, football, touch, pass. You can do that well, then. But wrestling's the same, the top guys in the world do the basics right. Do that well, and then from there you can build your style, build your techniques, build your arsenal. But it's hard, especially with Instagram, social media, and that people want to run before they can walk.
I know.
And I think sometimes coaches don't help that. If you want to get better at the sport, then you need to do the boring stuff time after time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I get guilty of that, and
it's hard
to before you're trying to cater for the brand new beginners coming in and your more established, high level, high grades. And I fall guilty sometimes of catering for the the guys who've been around for a while, purple belts, and forgetting about the beginners, and then I'm like, alright,
no,
that's what I mean.
In that regard, I think you're right. I think the beginners will learn from the other guys in the room.
Yeah.
But if you kept just going backwards and planning the session around the beginners, then
they're going to get bored at the high.
They're going to get bored, but they're never going to get better either.
Yeah, yeah. Is that balance it there?
Yeah, it's hard, and I know my dad said a couple of rants to me on the phone recently about coaching in Glasgow, that the inconsistent people coming to sessions, and you get in a couple of weeks of training with a certain group, and then guys drop off. But then if new guys come in, like guys who don't come week after week, they come back after 6 weeks and they want your full attention.
Yeah. It's hard,
and he says you can't plan sessions. He says it's really difficult. But for me, I think you plan it to. This is just my opinion for now, and that might change. It's different with kids, as different with kids, but with adults, I try to cater it to the level of the general class, like isn't the majority, and then their level will bring up the other guys in the room.
Yeah.
But it's also then the beginner's responsibility to extra training sessions. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Just ask questions. If you'll see it in there, I love it when somebody asks a question, because then it allows me then to try and offer my thoughts, and they're not always right. By no means, I don't think I'm always right, but if I can try and make a difference to someone just starting on the graph and journey, then
it is definitely that. I think my approach to it is I've got a loose kind of lesson plan, what I want to try and achieve in that lesson, but it's baggy enough to be flexible with it, like, do you know what I mean? Depending if we get all high grades to the class or if it's all beginners, then it's flexible enough to be able to like deliver a different. But it's hard, and again, a balance, and again, to what we spoke about at the beginning, because it is a business, it's your livelihood in some respects.
That's where you've
got to be conscious of everything.
I understand that.
Longevity of people continuing training and keeping the credibility of the club.
For sure.
But you want
you numbers on the door, and that's where I'll maybe learn that more firsthand when, if it comes to me starting a club or starting as a business, then I'll maybe then have to. It's easy for me to sit here and say, it should be. Put me down, but you're right, 100%. You need the people coming through the door.
It's hard.
It's hard to find that balance, and that's what I think Jiu-Jitsu does really well, though, is about like when they do beginners courses, about beginners classes, and then they do like a competition class, or they do like a, you know what I mean?
There's different levels,
and I think that's really good. Wrestling, very rarely, I know there's one or two clubs or a couple of clubs that have it now, but most clubs, like my dad's club in Glasgow, they don't have that. It's just one session, which is where he's finding it difficult.
I think there's only 2 clubs that I'm aware of in the northwest. There's probably more, like you probably have better knowledge than me. One in Bolton, there's Bolton Wrestling in there, and there's Aspel, which is obviously.
There's quite a lot. See, the north of England is the most popular area for wrestling.
Right.
By far. There's loads. I don't want to offend anyone in case I don't.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot of clubs in the area, and well-established clubs as well. Been long running, and I could never understand when I was in Glasgow. Like, again, this is kind of, I'm not going to go into it too much because there's always a kind of politics between clubs, and that as there always is.
Yeah.
But for me, being in Glasgow with a couple of clubs, I always looked at North England and thought, it must be amazing to be there because there's wrestling everywhere and that. And it's not until I've actually been down here more consistently, last 6 months, I realised that it's maybe not being utilised the popularity of wrestling as well as it could have been, or should be. But there's always going to be the politics.
It's politics, we won't go into it now. It's not for the scope of this podcast, but there's all sorts of cross-training politics, and uniform politics, and
a lot of it comes down to cross-training. So
crazy. So just to finish off, before we finish, mate, we've touched on some slightly already. You're walking into jiu-jitsu gyms, you've got the experience you've got as a wrestler. What are some of the kind of the pet peeves you see in terms of the wrestling from jiu-jitsu guys? Like stuff that maybe, you talked about it before, like bad habits.
Can I start with from lying on my back? Trying to think.
What is your first impressions of jiu-jitsu wrestling? Anyway, shit.
No. No, it's just, I'll tell you one pet peeve, maybe.
Because we're joking about it, but
yeah. No,
a
general pet peeve, and it's not at one person or one class or one group in particular. Obviously, like you guys have a wrestler to come in, and I understand that I'm trying to cater it, as I mentioned, for jiu-jitsu. I'll make it specific to jiu-jitsu. But everyone seems to like the idea of improving their wrestling. Everyone is always on it, like, want to improve my wrestling. But when I provide, or when they get given alternatives or suggested other options or suggested to change their older habits, they find it very, very difficult.
Right.
They find it very difficult. They find it more comfortable, I think, to stick to their old habits, which to me a lot of the time, it's not wrong, but it could be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about technique, you mean? So they're all
that's more in a technical sense,
yeah.
Like they find it more comfortable, they'll try it, they'll maybe find it difficult because it's not habit, it's not routine for them yet.
Yeah.
They've only done it 4 or 5 times, 4 or 5 repetitions.
I think from my point of view, a coaching point of view, I like to see, and I try and do it when you teach us something in the class, and then we do the wrestling drills at the end.
Yeah.
And this is something I try and instill in the guys and girls at the gym. It's not always about trying to win in that scenario, it's about trying to utilise what you've been taught or what you learn or trying something new. So you teach us a single leg entry, that might not be my game, but I will try and do that in the specifics. Is that what you're trying to get at? Whereas it'd be easy for me to go, fuck that, I'm not trying to do a single leg, I'm going to go for a snap down because I'm taller every time.
100%, and again, it's not one size fits all. What I suggest in the session might genuinely just not work for someone, but then ask me if there's another option, if there's another way to do it. It's like sometimes I feel like it's just more comfortable for them to stick in their old habits, but their old habits that maybe aren't working.
Yeah.
And if you want to get better, if you want to improve, then okay, you're going to have to try and take on information, that taking on information is something I'm finding difficult working with kids, but that's another story. But yeah, just don't always look at what I'm demonstrating. Try and watch what I'm demonstrating, or watch what I'm showing, watch what I'm saying, but listen to what I'm saying. I think that's something I've really picked up on the last couple of weeks. Not just in jiu-jitsu gyms, or not just in MMA, it's more so with the kids, but I think it kind of goes across. Listen to the points I'm making, okay? Because when I do a demonstration, it's going to be very quick.
Yeah.
Or you don't have a feel for it and stuff like that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I'm speaking, or when I'm talking you through it, when I'm making points, I think that's probably more important than anything.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a pet peeve, but you know what I mean?
Just an observation.
It's an observation.
Yeah. And that's cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I definitely agree that you see it all the time.
It's not just in jiu-jitsu. If someone tried to change my eating habits, for example, it's more comfortable for me to stick to.
Yeah, of course.
It's always the same. It's easy to stick in your.
The cliche is like growth is going to be uncomfortable in it.
100%.
Definition, you're changing who you are as a person, whatever your habits and that, it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be a period of pushback from it in there.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the more open you are to trying new things, like opening up another avenue in your game, for example wrestling, or it could be more niches, having a different style in your wrestling game, different style in your jiu-jitsu game, it's obviously going to make you better. Do you consider yourself to have a style? What would your style be in wrestling? Are there styles in wrestling? I mean, there obviously are.
There's definitely styles. Trying to think of what I'd call it. It's changed a bit when I was younger. I was relatively fast. I liked being fast. Always shooting to the legs, trying to finish from there. But as I've got older, I like wrestling a bit more from counter-attacks. And I think wrestling as a whole has moved much more that way, to counter-attacks.
Right.
And there's a lot less people, I think, finishing on leg attacks and more people scoring from the other person attacking.
Would you, this is my observation, would you agree that, and generalisation this, but younger, more athletic athletes, shall we say, would be more inclined to be shooting for legs and stuff, whereas older, less athletic is more upper body? Or is that too much of a...
No, it depends, but that makes sense. It's more efficient.
Yeah.
It's more efficient if you're older. And I don't even mean me, I'm not much older than me.
You're not old.
No, I just look at it. But it can be much more efficient than just wrestling from the attack or wrestling upper body. Because if you're just constantly going to someone's legs, one, it uses a lot of energy, but you can also get stuck with it.
I know we spoke last week that entering into the legs is sometimes better for someone who may be older and less athletic. Upper body first, isn't it? Like we did with your underhook.
And that's something we're going to work on. I think this will be tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to keep working that inside trip a bit more, but from next week I think we're going to really need to go back to getting that confidence in the attack.
Yeah.
Because you'll have seen it at the end of the rounds, when they come into the rounds, there is very few wide attacks actually being.
Yeah. We use like less.
People's not trying them so much probably because of confidence, but there's very few getting finished as well. Most of them, the ones that do, most of them are getting defended upon. So, and it's just breaking that confidence, creating that confidence, and their attacking, which isn't easy, but I think it's. I think it'll.
Well, it's something we're working on trying to get.
Yeah, but no, as I said before, the guys in here have been absolutely brilliant.
And everyone loves it. It's hard. It's an hard session. Do you know what I mean? But it's good. Like not hard as in like you're not like beasting us for an hour, which is another thing I thought. She's going to come in and just beast us for an hour.
I don't get that. As I say, I'm not here to try and make the guys fitter. I'm not here to condition them into machines. I'm here to improve. My role here really is technically trying to improve them.
And that was the thing that I tried to. I don't know why it is, and maybe it's my job as a coach, and I'm not sure why it is yet, but the no-gi scene in this particular club, we've got the diehards who love no-gi and they love the wrestling, but for people to cross over from the gi into that, there's some sort of barrier, whether it's some of the techniques that are taught, maybe they're a little bit like intimidated by the physicality of the wrestling, but I'm trying to get people to, you're not beasting us for an hour. The warm-up's probably the hardest bit, and then we've got like, it's really technical in it for most of the class, and a couple of wrestling rounds at the end. That's what I would say to people who are members of this club particularly, who are a bit intimidated by coming. It's not just a beasting for an hour. You learn a technique. It's a technique.
I don't see any, even if it was a wrestling club, I don't see a value in that. I don't see a value in that. Even for the wrestling clubs I coach at, like pure wrestling, get a good warm-up, and just a slightly longer version of the one we do here. Offer a position, or most of its kids are really go into showing the position and do it this way, blah blah blah. For now, we'll wrestle in that situation, and then we'll maybe either cover another technique, or then we'll go into wrestling rounds. Similar to that, but again, I don't see any value in beasting them.
Well, there's not.
It doesn't benefit anyone.
Injury
to me, it's just old school, and it's not a case of I'll never go hard. There's times where you do need hard sessions. A lot of the time it's more psychological than anything. But I don't believe in 3-4 times a week just coming in and just making the guys do like suicide runs up and down. Hot mat and that. If you wanted to go and do that, go to a ring hop.
Exactly.
I'm here to try and make them better wrestlers and make them just,
And you are, mate. It's been great to have you as part of the team for the last however many months, since October last year, hasn't it? If people was interested in maybe approaching you to get them down their club, or they want to do one-to-ones, how do people get in touch with you, or where are you based?
I'm based in West Auckland and Bolton, and if they wanted to get in touch with anything, it would probably just be easiest through my Instagram, either Ross Connelly, which is my personal account, or Ross Connelly Wrestling, which is my wrestling-based account. So, no, and Dave, I can't thank you enough and the guys here for welcoming them to the gym, and I'm looking forward to the future.
So, mate, appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Now we're freezing cold, changing rooms.
No, roasting.
Nice one, Ross. Cheers, pal.
Cheers.
Nice one.
Thank you. Good.
Awesome, mate. Nice
Thank you
one.
very much, mate. Cheers. Enjoyed that.